Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:06 on this Friday morning in the nation's capital, the second day of February. Happy Groundhog's Day. We have no report yet from Puxatawny,
Phil,
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
He's getting his eyebrows waxed.
They're in preparation. They're starting to get hyped up. Things are happening, and we'll let you know as soon as we know.
I see people dressed as flowers dancing around.
They want
it's
their
like
spring.
A pagan.
It's enough.
It looks like a pagan festival.
It is.
There.
They're totally worshiping at the altar of a frickin' rodent. All right. Coming up later in the program at 8:05, Steve Malloy. He is the founder of Junk Science. He's the author of Scare Pollution, Why and How to Fix the EPA. We'll get his opinion of John Podesta as your new climate czar.
There you go.
He's going to save the planet, that John Podesta. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka.
Happy Friday.
Thanks for dressing like a groundhog today, by the way.
Oh,
you really
pink?
went the extra mile.
I did pink and houndstooth plaid. Is that what his outfit's going to be today?
Sure.
Okay.
Joining us right now is Reagan Reese, the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, who's been doing quite a bit of reporting across the board on what went wrong with the Ron DeSantis campaign. Reagan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
So it's funny. I went on a little mini rant yesterday about Ron DeSantis because it's like as soon as he left the campaign trail, he goes back to Tallahassee. He starts to get energized. He starts to, propose all these new bills, and he's doing these daily selfie videos, and he's actually being a more articulate defender of the Texas border than even Greg Abbott, and Greg Abbott's pretty damn good at it. And it's like, where was this guy on the campaign trail, Reagan?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like the pressure's off, you kind of perform better when the pressure is off. But staffers described this really interesting scene to us inside the campaign where there was a lot of fingers being pointed inside of who was to blame. Coming off a really big Coming off a really big win in Florida when he won re-election for governor. He brought over a lot of his Tallahassee hires, and a lot of former staffers pointed to that being the issue, that these people didn't have experience running a presidential campaign or a campaign of that scale. And another thing I found really interesting through our reporting was that these former staffers were actually pointing to DeSantis himself. That was the guy who was, making things uptight, and he was micromanaging every fundraising email, every tweet. These former staffers said he had to look at and get his hands on. Wow. And that's a big task for a presidential candidate, to look at every single thing that's coming out of his campaign.
Also, Reagan, it's interesting looking at your piece here. You kind of set the scene by setting up what was the announcement for him running for president, and that it was kind of a failure. With it was supposed to be announced on Twitter, and the technical hitches meant that they had to abandon that announcement once altogether and try to salvage his persona as, okay, this is going to be a signal of what's to come. Do you think that really was it was not just technical glitches, but a lack of planning, of preparation that the campaign was experiencing? Is that what you're hearing from some of the people after the fact?
Yeah, I think this anecdote illustrates perfectly kind of what it was like inside of the campaign and what they experienced, and kind of gives you an idea of what was going to happen to come. I mean, from the very moment the campaign launched, these staffers kind of felt like the writing was on the wall. One former staffer told me as soon as he got there, he texted his friends, Trump's going to win, because they went into this Twitter Spaces. They had a bunch of donors in a room watching the Twitter Spaces launch, and DeSantis kept cutting in and out. And one former staffer who was in the room told me it was really uncomfortable. Here's all this anticipation. But go back even further from this Twitter launch. Former staffers told me that 24 hours before they launched the campaign, they weren't cued in on the plans. They found out through NBC News, who broke the story, that Ron DeSantis was going to be running for president, and then he was going to be launching on Twitter Spaces. So just constant chaos, not to mention they also, put out this "we broke the internet" spin after the Twitter Spaces failed and cut out. And these former staffers, again, didn't really believe that spin. So one of the former staffers told us, the internet broke us.
Reagan Reese is our guest, White House correspondent at the Daily Caller, and she's got a really thorough post-mortem of the DeSantis for President campaign that she's posted over there. It's kind of an autopsy, I suspect. What about the consultants? And whenever I see a candidate who, he had a certain persona and a certain sort of style when he was governor, and then he runs for president, and he seems like a completely different dude, and then he suspends his campaign and goes back to being governor. He goes right back to being that guy that people really sort of got energized about. I immediately think, oh, he was handled. He was given advice. Oh, you got to be like this. You got to do that. You got to say this. Is there any inkling that may have been part of the problem?
Again, I think the former staffers mainly pointed to DeSantis himself, kind of taking on this different persona, taking on this micromanaging tendencies. That was this problem. That was part of this that, compounded into this, I guess, awkward and stiff guy. It seems they were always pointing to him making these decisions to not be on doing media hits. He himself admits that afterwards on the Hugh Hewitt show. I should have been doing more media. I should have gotten myself out there more. And it
was his idea not to?
Yeah, it appears that, he was making these decisions, making all of these calls, which again is a lot for a presidential candidate. You kind of have to put your trust in some of those staffers to make the call for you. A Never Back Down official did tell me that, they tried every time he was scheduled for them, Never Back Down being a super PAC, to, schedule him for media hits. But he did make that realization after the fact that he didn't do enough media and make that choice himself.
After a campaign ends and it doesn't end the way folks wanted to, those working for the campaign, I would think that there's some sour grapes. Do you get a sense that any of these, that some of the people you spoke with, they're coming from a place of sour grapes or trying to kind of distance themselves from the failure so that they can get jobs in the future running other campaigns?
Yeah.
Is there a little bit of that in this here?
That's an interesting question. I think some of the staffers I spoke to actually really still believe in the governor and still believe that the governor was the guy and are coming from a place of accountability. I do think that there are some who were upset with how they were treated, but there were also staffers who were also afraid to speak out because they're still trying to find their place in the conservative landscape, still trying to find a job. So, you're going to get a little bit of all of that across the board. But I do think one common theme was some of these guys still believing that, Ron DeSantis would make a great presidential candidate and wanted to hold him accountable for, if he chooses to run in 2028.
I'll tell you, even if that Twitter Spaces thing had worked that night, let's say technologically it all happened perfectly. You're announcing your campaign for president, and instead of doing a big, standing in front of the American flag with thousands of Floridians who love everything that you've done, the free state of Florida and the entire message that you had coming out of COVID, instead you're doing an audio-only presentation with no pictures, with two of the richest people in America, Elon Musk and a billionaire, David Sachs, to talk about, who cares what at that point? There's no visual, there's no image, and there's nothing that the American people can relate to because it's a guy talking to two billionaires. Even if technologically it worked, Reagan, I think it's just a terrible call.
Yeah, it definitely, and I think that's why some of these staffers were frustrated. They weren't cued in on the plan and found out through NBC News because they didn't get to give their input. And it looked like, right after the Twitter Spaces, DeSantis went on Fox News and kind of talked about his launch. And that seemed to, smooth things over with some people who were really upset with it.
Yeah, but that narrative was set, right? Yeah. We got to leave it. Reagan, I'm sorry. We got to leave it there. We're out of time.
So much,
but great
Reagan.
Reporting, by the way.
Excellent
Hillsdale
stuff.
College's finest, Reagan Reese. Not the finest.
Thank
There's a
you
lot of
so
good
much.
people from Hillsdale, but she's one of them. Thanks, Reagan. It's 7:16. Let's go.
WMAL, making sense of the economy because it's your money and your retirement. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Like all Californians and really all Americans living in a major city that models itself off of Democrat-run
Yes.
California, because, listen, California has something in common with pretty much every major city in America, and that is it's dominated by Democrat politicians making decisions and Soros-funded Democrats who are the district attorneys or state's attorneys or Commonwealth attorneys or whatever, who are utilizing these brand new soft-on-crime, reaction to systemic racism in the justice system policies that have made life more dangerous across the board. Of course, as usual, it all started in California. It started with a proposition called Proposition 47. I don't want to bore you, but just hear me out here. The people of California actually voted under the guise of systemic racism and criminal justice reform. They voted, the people voted, and they were inspired by Gavin Newsom and other Democrats because they all got behind it. They voted a new proposition to change the law having to do with mandatory criminal sentences and mandatory criminal designations. This whole idea that anything under $1,000 that is stolen was treated as a misdemeanor instead of a felony, that was a state referendum. The people of California voted this in. So everyone who says, well, I blame the people of California, you're 100% right. What we're seeing right now play out. But understand, that thing was written by Democrats, promoted by Democrats.
Framed by a Democrat-loving media.
100%.
Yes.
Because here's what happens. This is why they do these state referendums. And I'm glad we live in an area. We have a few state referendums, but it's not like California. The reason these Democrat politicians like Gavin Newsom do these state referendums to push these issues that they love and they want, they do that instead of voting on it themselves. See, they could have passed laws in Sacramento to do this, but then they'd be on the hook for the circumstances,
That's right. Yeah.
Instead, they do a state referendum and their hands are clean. And it played out exactly that way with Governor Gavin Newsom. Here he is. He was on a Zoom call of sorts. So forgive the audio a bit, but he was talking about how he was standing in a drugstore and he saw somebody shoplift and just walk out without any ramifications. And listen to what he complains about.
Checking out, the woman says, oh, he's just walking out. He didn't pay for that. I said, well, why are you stopping him? She goes, oh, the governor. I swear to God, true story. And my mom's great. The governor lowered the threshold. There's no accountability. I said, that's just not true. And I said, we have the 10th toughest, $950, the 10th toughest in America. She doesn't even know what I was talking about. By the way, it's the 10th toughest in America. Look it up. No one gives a damn about that. And I said, it's just not true. There's still stop. They said, well, we don't stop them because of the governor. And then she looks at me twice, and then she freaks out. She calls everyone over, wants to take photos. I'm like, no, I'm not taking a photo. We're having a conversation. Where's your manager? How are you blaming the governor? And it was, $380 later. And I was like, why am I spending $380? Everyone can walk the hell right out.
By the way, good question, Governor. But I love that he gets really mad. I want to talk to your manager. Not because of the shoplifting.
Exactly.
I want to talk to your manager because you're falsely blaming me, the governor, for doing this. But see, this is perfect. You see, he promoted it. He and his party sponsored it, defended it. And yet now he can say, it wasn't me. It was Prop 47.
He does not want to live with the consequences of that worldview. That let's make it easier for people to shoplift by reducing the penalties.
That's right.
And you know what? I think part of what happened is that this was framed as criminal justice reform to help people. There is criminal justice reform that is worth actually getting behind when people have served their punishment.
Right.
Not reducing penalties for violent offenses. Frankly,
of course.
But that's different.
But
they
that's
lump
not
it all
what this
together.
is.
And
That's
not what this is.
Nope. And by the way, and all the prosecutors who decide to let people out on cashless bail and not prosecute these, he goes, we have the 10th largest penalties for a $900 misdemeanor is what he was trying to say. Yeah, but if your prosecutors that you promoted and you ran with don't bring the charges, it's meaningless. And that's why cops don't do any arrests anymore.
Why would you waste your time?
Because the charges aren't coming. Okay. So there's that.
Yes.
And then there's this. We've talked about how here in D.C., Walmart's is closing. Target is closing. CVS's are closing because of this crime. And we've been saying it every time we get these notices that they're closing. We've been saying it here on this program. Just wait. Democrats are going to come back and they're going to accuse these companies of racism for closing these stores in these neighborhoods. And sure enough, yesterday, Ayanna Pressley, Congresswoman.
Mr. Speaker, Walgreens is planning to close yet another pharmacy in the Massachusetts 7th, this time on Warren Street in Roxbury, a community that is 85% Black and Latino. This closure is a part of a larger trend of abandoning low-income communities like the previous closures in Mattapan and Hyde Park, both in the Massachusetts 7th. When a Walgreens leaves a neighborhood, they disrupt the entire community, and they take with them baby formula, diapers, asthma inhalers.
That's right. They're racist. It's all about race, and it's hurting the Black community. But guess what? I remember during, the George Floyd riots and the riots in Baltimore and the riots in Ferguson. Remember which businesses got looted first? The ones that got looted, they were drugstores like CVS and Walgreens.
Right.
And I don't remember Ayanna Pressley yelling
saying
at the looters
about that.
Yeah,
exactly.
No,
Funny thing, I actually have a connection to this story. The Walgreens in Roxbury that she's talking about, I used to live in that neighborhood when we first moved to this country. That's the community. My family lives still our property is very close to that area. So I know that inner city well. Those are immigrants. Those are low-income communities. Those are people who, are need access to drugstores, need access to be able to meet their daily needs. The problem is not with the drugstore for making an economic decision. The problem is with the defund the police folks, the police, with the people who want to push this idea that you can reduce penalties for crimes that should be punished severely as a deterrent so that you don't have it happen over and over again. But yes, Ayanna Pressley.
You're right.
I know who she is, and that whole ilk of people. They start the fire, and then they watch it burn out of control,
and they blame everyone
else and throw away the match.
Yeah, it's like the guy dressed up in the hot dog costume saying, "We got to find out who did this." You know what else? The people in that you're right. The people who live there, they need the CVS, they need the drugstore, they need the diapers. You know what else they need? They need law enforcement. They need law and order. They need criminals punished.
Yep.
Yeah. It's 7:25. Do you have anything?
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:37. It's O'Connor and Company here on this Friday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for joining us. Larry O'Connor alongside you.
I'm Patrice Onwuka.
Yes, you are. And you're pretty in pink today. It's your signature color.
It is.
I thought, when it's a signature color, you're supposed to wear the color all the time, but you don't always wear pink.
Well, no, not always, because I have a lot of colors, but I tend to stay in the jewel tones. Yellows, oranges, teals.
You've answered everybody's burning questions today, honestly. Thank you for that. Coming up at 8:05, Steve Malloy. He's the founder of Junk Science and author of Scare Pollution. Find out his opinion of John Podesta now being named as the climate czar.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's me, but you think of John Podesta, and you think just a handful of things. Generally speaking, his persona around D.C. has been he's a fixer. He comes up and cleans up the mess of a scandal, right? During the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing, that was his job. He was brought in for the Hillary Clinton campaign when it began under fire with the email scandal, right? Yep. It's like whenever a president is in crisis, you bring in John Podesta. And now here he is, your brand new climate czar. Fascinating. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Anywho, we've got news, really important news.
All right.
We have word from Puxatawny, Pennsylvania.
All right.
The big announcement has been made. The groundhog has been ripped from his little box. And everybody says he crawls out from a hole. No. He's sitting in a box, and some weird dude wearing a top hat reaches in and grabs him.
By the tail.
And then pretends like they're talking to him. And, and weirdly, groundhogs always speak in rhyme. Who knew that? It's like some weird,
Disney. It's like a Disney movie.
Iambic pentameter or something. I don't know what it is, but here's the big announcement that you've all been waiting for on this second day of February.
It's Puxatawny Phil!
Oh my God, they are so drunk. It's like a tailgate, isn't it?
No, it's like
a big frat party.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, gather round.
It's only men, by the way, who are on the.
No, I saw some women out there. Dressed up as flowers.
Not on the console, though. This special.
That's true.
Puxatawny. Oh, yeah. Though there's a glass ceiling there big time. Yeah. Only dudes. It's like the Masters tournament down in Augusta. It's gotten ugly. Yeah. I mean, there could be, like, Dylan Mulvaney could be one of them, I suppose. Maybe Leah Thomas, but other than that.
Hey, we have a decision.
All right, here it is.
A prediction has been made, Mr. President. Hear ye, hear ye! Now on this February 2nd, Punxsutawney Phil, the seer of seers, prognosticator of all prognosticators, was awakened from his wintry nap at dawn on Gobbler's Knob. Phil looked to the skies and then, speaking in Groundhogese, directed the president to the proper scroll, which reads, "Another winter's slumbered pause so I could meet the crowd. Hard to sleep anyway when the party's this loud. I envy your energy. I envy the fun. I envy all of you and your opposable thumbs."
A groundhog wants opposable thumbs.
Well, sure. Because they can grab things. Do they not have opposable thumbs, though?
I guess they just have claws like this.
Raccoons do, right? If you're
That's
like a
how they're
raccoon's
able to take that donut from the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through.
You love that video.
I do.
I guess they don't have opposable thumbs. But some rodents have opposable thumbs.
Marsupials?
Yeah,
Would
okay,
that be them?
sure.
Yeah, let me look this up.
All right, do that. In
While
the
we
meantime,
listen.
we'll continue with
Okay.
the very important news out of
The
Philadelphia
day.
or Pennsylvania.
But it's not what I feel, it's what I see and what you hear. So gather round and let me be clear.
I just want to, we're going to continue here, of course, but I just want to comment. I am really impressed that he's 30 seconds into the announcement and he has not made a Taylor Swift reference. Because I sort of expected that.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
is true.
It's like, oh, I've got an idea. Right, but the cooler heads
They're
prevailed
keeping it kosher.
in the writer's room. Yes, they're going, all right. Although I'm afraid I've spoken too soon now. I'm hearing this along with you, friends.
Atmosphere is a wonderful thing. And we can create our own and the weather it brings.
Mm-hmm.
It brings hope for the future and so much more. Maybe some Punxsutawney Phil write-in votes in 2024.
Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry. Was that an announcement? Is he?
He's running?
Well,
That's a third-party candidate?
Worse.
Glad tidings on this Groundhog Day. An early spring is on the way.
There you go. See, these guys, they would have cheered either way, but apparently there will not be 6 more weeks of winter. Apparently this, yeah.
Do you think that he memorized 2 different versions?
No, there's 2 scrolls.
Oh,
there's 2 different scrolls.
So he's reading, okay.
Yes, he's reading the
I
scroll
don't have the video in
that Phil
front of
told
me.
him to read.
He said that one.
Cut to Bill Murray driving through the town with the groundhog on his lap.
Don't drive angry. Don't drive angry.
That is our message to all drivers out there in the D.C. area, second worst traffic in the country.
That's right.
That's
we did discuss that yesterday.
We can hear all the Bill Murray stuff. When was the last time you watched that movie, by the way?
It's been a long
It
time.
should be an annual thing, I think. It's just it's timeless, if I
In
may say.
totality, a college.
Except for Andie MacDowell, who was just not a very good actress, but she was fine. She was serviceable, but you know. Also, my favorite clip of Bill Murray.
I was in the Virgin Islands once. I met a girl. We ate lobster, drank pina coladas. At sunset, we made love like sea otters.
Let's see.
That's weird.
What does that mean?
Was a pretty good day. Why couldn't I get that day over and over?
That sounds good, though, doesn't it? Going to the Virgin Islands in the middle of February and just sucking on a pina colada while you're sitting on the beach. Man, that sounds good.
Well, yeah.
It's 7:43. Joe Biden really wants those Michigan voters, and he thinks that the way to do it is to continue to court the UAW. You saw he gave that speech to UAW workers recently. The head of the UAW actually said, yeah, we're giving the endorsement, but our workers, the majority of them are voting for Trump. He was in Michigan, and he stopped by a phone bank where there were a bunch of UAW workers at a union meeting doing some politicking.
Because when we got all these numbers moving and you guys endorsed me, he talked about a simple thing. He said, this is about giving people a shot. That's all it is. It's just fairness. Give people a shot. That's what you do. That's what you do. And besides, you built my 67 Corvette. My pride. Any ever watch Jay Leno's Garage? We watched me race on my 67 Corvette. It's only a 327, 350. I tell you what, man, I got up to 130 miles an hour, though. Secret Service doesn't like riding with me very much anymore. Anyway, thank you. And you're not only helping auto workers, you're helping every worker in the world.
That's
joking about that Corvette in his garage.
The one next to the secret documents. Yeah,
classified documents.
The one that he lets his crackhead son drive.
And besides, you built my 67 Corvette. My pride.
Quite a guy.
I wish he would. He was talking about giving people a shot. Give independent contractors, freelancers, self-employed Americans a shot by not enacting your ridiculous new regulations against them. Give small businesses a shot. How about that, Mr. President?
Sean Fain, president of the UAW, introducing Biden.
There's one plan we have going forward, and that's to keep Joe Biden as our president.
There's your next Secretary of Labor, ladies and gentlemen, should he get the victory. It's 7:53.